25 years after Ben Needham went missing, a heartbreaking warning to his mother to prepare for the worst. Kerry Needham's been told about a new witness who claims her son was killed by accident and buried in secret the very day he went missing.
Could have been ended 25 years ago. Could have. I could have probably forgiven that person back then, but now, no. It's 25 years of misery to find out this ending.
Kerry Needham spoke exclusively to ITV News and our correspondent Martin Geisler. Also on News at 10 tonight. I'm not Nigel Light, UKIP's new leader Diane James, and where she plans to take the party post the Brexit vote. Meanwhile, the 27 members staying in the EU meet without us, as Merkel calls it, situation critical. And Wessex on wheels, why the Countess is on her bike to Buckingham Palace.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. For most families, a time span of 25 years means the joy of watching children grow up and perhaps start a new generation of their own. For Kerry Needham, it has meant only an agonising wait for news of her son Ben, who disappeared without trace on the Greek island of Kos, aged just 21 months. Now it seems all her dreams of seeing her son again, now as an adult, may be dashed. A witness has come forward claiming the little boy was accidentally crushed to death by a digger all those years ago and secretly buried. In an exclusive interview with ITV News, Ben's mother, Kerry Needham, revealed the police have told her to prepare for the worst.
The past 25 years have been a long, dark, lonely journey for Kerry Needham, but the desperate search for her missing son may finally be reaching an end. Detectives on the case have received new, credible information. They now believe Ben died on the day he disappeared, killed in an accident on the Greek island of Kos and buried nearby. They think they know where the body is, and they're preparing to dig. Kerry has been warned to brace herself for the worst.
We don't want to accept it. We don't want to believe it. You know, I think we've lived for 25 years with that hope that one day he will come through the door. And we don't want to accept it. It's going to be difficult, really, really difficult.
The team will focus on two areas close to this small farmhouse, the last place Ben was seen. Reconstructions like this one have formed part of a 25-year search that spanned the world. But now detectives believe he's been here all that time.
In one respect, I hope to God that they don't find anything, and I'll still have that hope that Ben is out there. But then, can I live with that for the rest of my life? You know, this roller coaster of emotions, up and down, the devastation of thinking that we've found him, and then after DNA tests, it's not him. I just don't know what is the better outcome.
The new theory points to this man, Konstantinos Barkas. He's said to have been driving a digger close to the spot where Ben was last seen. It's alleged he may have killed Ben by accident and then buried the body. Barkas died recently, and only then did a friend of his come forward to share that thought with police.
This new witness that's come forward is obviously a man from Kos. He's known our family. He's seen me on the TV. He's seen my family on the TV for 25 years. And he knew this information 25 years ago, of course. I'm angry. And I'll be more angry. I know it'll be the stages of grief, if you like. I mean, I will be angry. Of course I will. He could have ended this 25 years ago. I could have grieved, had my daughter, moved. You'll never forget your child, but at least I would have known where he was. You know, and I could have done something with my life instead of having a life on hold and not being able to do anything or focus on anything and live in this nightmare. It could have been ended 25 years ago. Could have. I could have probably forgiven that person back then, but now, no. It's 25 years of misery to find out this ending. No, it's going to be difficult.
This search can only yield two possible conclusions, and each one is as bleak as the other. Either Kerry's misery continues, or she learns, at last, that her son is dead. For all this time, you've been following this light,
Yes.
this hope. If that light goes out, how do you begin to cope with that?
To deal with the fact that he could be dead and he's been dead for 25 years, I don't know. If I can get up from it, can I? Am I strong enough to? I just don't know. If I am, I know there's only so much stress and trauma a person's mind and body can take. I might have a heart attack, I might die of shock, I just don't know. I'm scared of that. I am scared of how I'm going to be able to deal with this if that's the case, if they do find something.
With limited funds available, this is likely to be the final push for the Ben Needham investigation. Kerry knows if she doesn't get an answer this time, it's likely she never will. Martin Geisler, News at 10.
Well, this latest development comes after 25 years of apparent breakthroughs and terrible setbacks in that search for Ben Needham. There have been more than 300 reported sightings around the world, from Germany to Australia to Canada. 3,000 people have been interviewed, DNA tests have been carried out on dozens of young men, and at least 30 people thought to look like him have been ruled out. It was in the heat of a Greek summer Ben vanished outside a Kos farmhouse on the 24th of July 1991. Nearly 2 years later, claims he'd been abducted surfaced for the first time. A Greek man called the missing persons hotline, adamant Ben was living with a man 350 miles from Kos. But it took 13 years for that information to be passed on to Interpol. In 1995, a theory developed that the toddler had been kidnapped by travellers.
I'm waiting for a phone call from my dad to, let me know exactly how true it is, what's happening.
That December, a young blonde boy found living with a traveller family in Salonika was taken into police custody, but it wasn't Ben. A year later, Ben's grandparents met a Greek prisoner who repeated the claim. Again, it led nowhere. Whatever the false hopes and dead ends, the Needhams never gave up campaigning, though, and in 2011, Greek and South Yorkshire police reopened formal investigations. It led to the first forensic dig on Kos in 2012, but nothing was found apart from a few children's toys. Then, armed with £1 million from the Home Office, South Yorkshire Police launched Operation Ben, a new investigation team. And Ben's mother, Kerry, appeared on Greek TV in a fresh appeal.
I'm very, very hopeful.
A man even came forward claiming to be Ben, but he was an imposter. Last year, Operation Ben questioned a traveller family in northern Greece, but again found no link. Over all these years, the closest the Needhams have come to picturing their little boy is through artists' impressions of how he looked as he was growing up. What heartbreak then for the family to learn the images may never have been a reality. Martin Geisler joins me now in the studio. I mean, there's so much to talk about, apart from this extraordinary interview and the emotional impact on Kerry and how she's coped. What timeline might emerge now, do you think, in terms of what happens next?
Well, it's not precisely clear, Julie. I understand, in fact, this operation might begin in the next couple of weeks. South Yorkshire Police did release a statement today. They didn't say too much, but they did confirm that a team of officers will go to Kos in the coming weeks for what they described as planned operational activity, in other words, digs, at 2 sites on the island. Now, Kerry Needham works very closely with these officers. She thinks the world of them. They share a lot of information. They've been very open and honest with her. They have said to her, there's no X marks the spot in this case, but she knows, she's very well aware that this is going to be a major exercise. It's not just going to be officers, there'll be specialists, there'll be machinery. They wouldn't be doing this if they didn't think there was a very substantial chance that they will find something. What she has to find now is the strength from somewhere within herself to brace herself psychologically for what these next weeks might deliver.
And how on earth will she cope with that, do you think, Martin? I mean, you spent quite a lot of time with her as well as recording the interview. And what's your assessment of how on earth she tries to grapple with what might lie ahead now in the next few weeks?
My first assessment is that she is a remarkable woman. She's an incredible woman. She speaks so eloquently, so lucidly, so powerfully. It seems to come from somewhere deep inside her. And she's been very strong, very robust for 25 years because she's had to be. But she's gone that whole time with a broken heart. You know, the more you think about what she's been through, the more difficult it seems to imagine it. And she will now be told either that her son is dead or that she has to face the probability that she will never know what happened to him. It's almost impossible to imagine. And then through this fog of emotions, from this fog comes the most powerful one, this anger that she's experiencing at the moment, that somebody could have sat on this for all this time. She's been through a horrible time. She's going to face even worse. She's going to have to be strong, Julia, that's for sure.
Indeed, Martin, thank you very much indeed. Now, there must be times when he still just can't quite believe it. In typical style, Nigel Farage formally brought to an end his leadership of the United Kingdom Independence Party today, having achieved his ambition in helping get Britain out of the EU. Moments later, at his party's conference, he was handing over to a new leader, Diane James. Difficult shoes to fill, perhaps, but she wasted no time in stressing she is no Nigel light and had a pretty pointed message too for the new Prime Minister.
With 8,451 votes, the leader of the UK Independence Party, Diane James.
She won easily, albeit on a small turnout, but for all her enthusiasm, can Diane James really fill Nigel Farage's shoes? She thinks so, going on the attack over whether the Tories will deliver on Brexit, while accusing the Prime Minister of stealing UKIP's policies.
But Magpie May. Magpie May, you've stolen so far our 2% defence spending. You've also tried to steal our grammar schools, but I think you're going to have a few difficulties getting that one through.
She may not be a household name like Nigel Farage, but she speaks the same language. And with Europe top of the political agenda, she could cause just as much trouble for the main parties at Westminster. So who is Diane James? She was elected as an MEP for South East England in 2014, having come a close second at the Eastleigh by-election the year before. But occasionally she's made gaffes, most notably when she called for an immigration freeze because of what she said was the crime associated with Romanians, something for which she later apologised. Wherever she leads the party now, she says she wants more MPs at Westminster. It's doubtful she'll be able to match this.
Together, we have changed the course of British history. And we've brought down a Prime Minister.
But critics in the party say she's ruthless, having today banned one speaker, former Tory MP Neil Hamilton.
It's my prerogative and I chose to change the programme.
Why? Okay. A purge?
No, not a purge.
But the man she excluded, currently UKIP's leader in the Welsh Assembly, wasn't amused.
But if she's sort of had a look at what's going on in the Labour Party and thinks, oh yeah, we'll have a bit of that for UKIP, I would have thought that was ill-advised.
Her predecessor never shied away from controversy, and nor, it seems, will she. Libby Vina, News at 10, Bournemouth.
While UKIP was celebrating the UK leaving the European Union, the 27 EU leaders apart from Britain were gathering by the Danube in Slovakia, wondering what their next move might be. This weekend's summit is officially informal, which means Britain didn't need to be invited, and Brexit has been firmly left off the agenda, though plenty, of course, was said about it today. And Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel admitted the EU is in a critical situation.
The family photo. Every summit has one. People rarely take much notice until suddenly one of the family isn't there. For the first time in 43 years, there is no British leader at an EU gathering. And while the UK isn't out yet, it's a sight Europe will be getting used to. The corridors are lined with flags, but they don't even leave a gap where the Union Jack would once have been. The waters are closing over the UK's membership, but the 27 left behind have problems that go well beyond Brexit. In fact, there are those here who'd like this man, the Prime Minister of Hungary, kicked out and the union reduced to 26. Luxembourg saying this week he deserved to be expelled because of his refugee policy. Maybe it was the Greek leader who best summed up what others were thinking.
What Europe should not do is to continue sleepwalking in the wrong direction.
They took to the water to try to put that right, a working lunch aboard a luxury cruiser in the Danube, surrounded by a flotilla of security craft. On board, their host provided a drop of the local firewater to try and get the discussion flowing. Most did little more than sniff gingerly. And anyway, it didn't do the trick.
Everything was renovated, no?
When it was all over, the leaders of Germany and France unusually held a joint press conference to signify their unity. But Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi then went and ruined it all by refusing to make it a threesome. I'm not satisfied with the summit's conclusions on economic or migration policy, he said, so I wasn't prepared to share a press conference with the German Chancellor or the French President. A show of dissent quickly followed by the new leader of the East European awkward squad, Hungary's Viktor Orban.
If you would like to evaluate the meeting, whether is it able to change the bad character, the false character of the refugee policy of Brussels, the answer is no. We were not able to change it.
And amid all this, the dramas of Brexit were almost forgotten. It will roar back to centre stage, of course, when Article 50 is triggered and the negotiating begins. But the idea that with Britain gone, the continent will return to unity and contentment seems a long way away tonight.
And talk to James now. And James, not necessarily on the agenda, as you were saying, they're not necessarily even discussed at great length. Were there any significant developments around Brexit today?
Oh, yeah, well, there was. And the only real discussion they had about it was at lunch when they talked about when Britain might trigger that Article 50 and get negotiations going. And Council President Donald Tusk was able to give them some news and then ultimately us some news, saying that he had been told by Theresa May last week that it was her intention to trigger Article 50 in January or February next year. Now, that's something she's never shared with us. We don't even know she shared it with her cabinet colleagues. But it was a bit of news. Still a united front from all the others in terms of their position vis-à-vis the UK, and some astonishment still that Britain still seems so far away from deciding what it wants in those negotiations.
It's fascinating insight, James, there from Donald Tusk. I'm sure people will be chewing over that at length this weekend. Pretty deep fault lines, though, aside from Brexit being laid bare at this gathering.
Yeah, I mean, this whole summit was meant to be about a show of unity after Brexit. And of course, it all got ruined at the end there. These big splits on austerity being imposed on the Mediterranean states within the Eurozone and what to do about the refugees and migrants. And of course, it's Italy who straddles both of those. They're suffering under the euro and they've got these hundreds of thousands of arrivals this year. But Eastern Europe as well, very discontented. All the signs now of a growing three-way split between Northern Europe, the Mediterranean states, and an increasingly assertive Eastern Europe, Eastern and Central. And of course, none of that is going to go away, whatever happens in Brexit.
OK, James, thank you very much indeed. Violent storms and torrential rain caused havoc across many parts of southern England today as the early autumn heatwave came to an abrupt end. Just outside Watford, a landslide triggered by the downpour caused a train to derail outside a tunnel. 2 people were injured there. Elsewhere, thunderstorms during the night caused flash floods and spectacular displays of lightning. Now, it's a case which has striking echoes of what happened to Gary McKinnon, a man with Asperger's syndrome who was accused of hacking into American government computers. Larry Love, who lives with his parents in Suffolk and also has Asperger's, was told by a court today he can be extradited to the US on similar charges. Mr. Love's supporters are desperately hoping that, like Mr. McKinnon 4 years ago, it's an ordeal he will be spared.
He's accused of being a super hacker who breached US government computer systems on a huge scale. Today, a judge decided Larry Love could be extradited to America to face trial.
I've deferred processing it, and I'll defer it until I'm in a safe environment where I know that I won't end up acutely depressed and being useless to the world. I really worry for the toll it's taking on my health and my family's because of the stress.
His father, a prison chaplain, believes his son, who has Asperger's syndrome, is too vulnerable to face US justice.
It is not fair or just that a boy who's got mental health issues can be taken away from his family, who are his support network, merely to satisfy the desire of the Americans to exact what I feel is vengeance on him. This is wrong.
Mr. Love is accused of hacking into various high-profile US sites, including the Federal Reserve, the Department of Defense, NASA and the FBI, and stealing huge amounts of data. If found guilty, he faces up to 99 years in an American jail. His family fear he will take his own life if extradited and want him to stand trial in Britain. Mr. Love's case has striking similarities to that of Gary McKinnon, another alleged cyber hacker with Asperger's, who was eventually spared extradition when the then Home Secretary Theresa May intervened. Today, his mother told me why she believed Mr. Love should also be spared.
We should not be sending mentally ill prisoners across the other side of the world who will be locked up, who will not get bail. He has no family there, they don't have tons of money, and often in solitary, to protect them from taking their own lives. This is inhumane.
But the US authorities, embarrassed by his alleged hacking, want Mr. Love's trial to be on their soil. Mr. Love intends to appeal against today's decision. Sejal Karia, News at 10, Central London.
In a few terse sentences today, Donald Trump put an end to a conspiracy theory he's been revelling in and then launched a fresh one. Mr. Trump finally conceded that Barack Obama was born in the USA before blaming Hillary Clinton for starting the speculation in the first place. Well, our correspondent Emma Murphy is in Washington for us tonight. And Emma, of all the astonishing moments in this campaign, this is pretty much up there, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's classic Trump, fact and fiction melded together and presented as the whole truth. For years now, he's been questioning whether or not Barack Obama was actually a legitimate president, whether he was born in this country. And then in 33 seconds today, he debunked it. Let's have a listen to what he was saying.
Hillary Clinton and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy. I finished it. I finished it. You know what I mean. President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
So there we have it. He says that he accepts that President Barack Obama was actually born here in the US, but he starts his statement with the fact that Hillary Clinton got this rumor out there back in 2008, which has been widely discredited and completely dismissed as an untruth in this country. And then, of course, he says that he was the one that actually nailed this myth and actually stopped everybody saying it. Well, that's not the case, because it was back in 2011 that Barack Obama put out his birth certificate to try and actually nail this rumour. And even after that, Donald Trump continued until today to actually continue with it. Now, what's significant here is the ratings, because Donald Trump hasn't apologised, and I think that's probably because he doesn't want to alienate his voters. However, he's polling around 6% with African American voters, and that is most likely why he actually chose to say something on this subject today.
OK, Emma, thank you very much indeed for that. Britain's Paralympians passed another major landmark today, winning their 50th gold medal of the Rio Games. More on that in a moment. But first, this has also been a Games where one British athlete has achieved an extraordinary personal landmark of her own. Kadina Cox wrote herself into the history books by winning golds and setting world records in two completely different sports. She's the first Briton to do that since 1984.
As debuts go, and much like her smile, it could hardly have been brighter. Kadina Cox's first Paralympics has meant medals of every colour, world records in different sports, a Games to remember.
It still hasn't quite sunk in. I've got these heavy things around my neck and I'm just like, are they actually mine? Is it actually real? I'm so happy. I'm relieved to have actually done it, and now I can put my feet up.
A relay silver last night meant 2 medals in both athletics and cycling. Only 2 years after a severe stroke. Out of the blue, she was also diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at the age of 23.
I was horrified. It's a very scary diagnosis to have, and you think your life's over and you think you're going to have to rely on people for the rest of your life.
Her immediate aim is to finish her physiotherapy degree.
I feel like a real life superwoman.
Then to focus on future Paralympics and on 3 sports, not just 2.
If I'm allowed to do them both in Tokyo, I will do them both in Tokyo. And now that I know the para bobsleigh is in the Winter Olympics in 2022, that's my next meet. They all make different sounds, like gold, bronze, silver.
You wonder how many medals she might end up winning, given how many others she's already impressing.
I loved reading Harry Potter, and I got a tweet from J.K. Rowling, and she followed me. I was so happy. That was literally like, it was on the same day as my 400 final, and that made me just about as happy as winning my gold medal.
Kadina had been one of the country's top sprinters before her illness, so perhaps she was always destined for success. What's certain is how she's embraced the new direction of her career, one of the standout performers of Rio's class of 2016.
So Richard, 50th gold early today. More victories for Britain's Paralympians tonight.
Well, Britain has won 8 golds in all today, including one for the man who led the team out 9 days ago at that opening ceremony. I'm talking, of course, about Lee Pearson, who won in the individual freestyle dressage. It is his 11th Paralympic gold medal. Very popular victory for one of the most popular members of the team. And to add to that, in the last couple of minutes, I can also say that Hannah Cockcroft across the city in the Athletics Stadium has won her 3rd gold of the Games in the 800 metres, her least favourite event if you want to add to the 100 and 400, but she did it anyhow, and she's now got the treble here to add to the double that she won in London. And one more thing I can say is that in the last literally 60 seconds, we've been guaranteed a gold in the archery, which all means that Paralympics GB has surpassed their target of 120 medals. They're on 121, and there's plenty of chances still to come. That will be very pleasing to the bosses of Paralympics GB and also UK Sport, who fund all the athletes. And what will be really impressive, I think, is the fact that there are so many golds, not quite so many silvers and bronzes, but they've been turned into golds, and that's something they didn't do quite as well in London. I think, though, looking forward, tomorrow, all eyes will be on Dame Sarah Storey. She goes again. She's in the road race. It could well be her last ever Paralympic performance. We don't know, but at the age of 38, it is possible. If she does win, it will be Paralympic gold number 14. Not a bad way to sign out.
Sure won't be. Thank you very much indeed for that, Richard. And finally, for 60 years, the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme has been helping teenagers get out of their bedrooms and into the great outdoors, with expeditions and gruelling physical challenges a hallmark of the experience. And now, to mark that anniversary, the Countess of Wessex has revealed she's planning a bike ride, and a pretty big one too, she told us, 450 miles from Holyrood House in Edinburgh to Buckingham Palace. And hats off too, frankly, to any woman who's happy to be filmed in her lycras.
The Countess of Wessex has been preparing for her 450-mile cycle ride for 6 months, a training programme that's taken her up to 82 miles a day. At the age of 51, she's a great believer in physical fitness, but admits that this challenge has tested her to the limit.
There have certainly been moments along the line, certainly in the early days of training, when going up yet another hill, I just thought, this is impossible. How I'm never going to be able to get the mileage up. I'm never going to be fit enough to do it. So I've probably surprised myself as to how far I've progressed, and have proven to myself that, yeah, I'm getting off my backside and I'm going to be able to do something.
If she needed inspiration, there was no need to look further than her 95-year-old father-in-law, whose Duke of Edinburgh award scheme this is all in aid of.
He's always remained fit. I mean, you know, there's not many people his age that are still, carriage driving. And, he realises, I think, probably that in order to retain his full physical faculty, that he has to get out there and make himself do things.
And she believes the Queen, who turned 90 this year, also sets a powerful example.
She's fabulous. She still rides. She has her dogs to walk. She's still very much engaged with all of her work. And I think the work side of things helps keep not only, healthy mind, and it's a healthy body.
Miles a day over 7 consecutive days, starting in Edinburgh on Monday. Tim Hewitt, News at 10.
So good luck to the Countess. We'll keep you posted on her progress. And just a reminder that our political editor, Robert Peston, will be talking to Owen Smith, the Labour leadership challenger, as his programme Peston on Sunday returns. But that is it from us. Tom will be here on Monday, but from me and all of the team, good night. Have a great weekend.